Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Asmita, Center Head, JMA, and I welcome you all on behalf of Jamshedpur Management Association. So, thank you for joining us today for this JMA Young Achievers session. In this series, we invite young professionals who are experimenting and excelling in their careers. Topic for today's discussion is Train Your Brain: How Neurofeedback Can Help with Stress Management. According to a recent Indian survey, 50% of respondents in the age group of 24 to 34 stated that they were feeling more stressed or anxious during past 12 months. The pandemic has definitely added to the anxiety, depression, and emotional distress. With this context, JMA has brought today's session in stress management. Today, we will learn about what neurofeedback is and how the science can help us befriend our nervous system and take control of our mental health. Our expert for today is Ms. Chetna Punia. She is the founder of Shunya Neuro and Biofeedback Center, operating from Auroville, Pondicherry. Chetna started her professional life as a biomedical engineer and further enhanced her repertoire by being a neurofeedback trainer, counselor, certified NLP practitioner, and qualified NLP psychotherapist. With a background in biomedical engineering and counseling psychology, Chetna utilizes her expertise in helping with various conditions like stress, anxiety, depression, migraines, etc. She is also a permanent member of Asia Pacific Neurofeedback Association. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome Chetna on JMA platform and hand over the session to her now. Welcome, Chetna.
Thank you, Asmita. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to this session and I hope all of you gain something out of it, some lifestyle hacks, some tips to help in stress management. Are the slides visible in full screen,
Yeah,
Asmita?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we begin to how to train your brain. What we will go through today is a brief about the biofeedback and neurofeedback technologies. Like Asmita mentioned, we're going to learn how science can help us retrain our brains and bodies to help with the stress, anxiety, day-to-day lives. A little brief introduction to the triune brain theory. We'll see a little bit about our window of tolerance, how it gets shrunk, how we can expand it, what we can do. And then we will end the presentation by looking at strategies to include in daily life for stress management. And for those of you who might be interested, we'll look at some home training devices that you can invest in for regular monitoring and for a better well-being. So what is feedback? Feedback, as a term we are all aware of. We get feedback from everybody, from the teachers, from the bosses, from our spouses, from our children, and also from our own body. If you eat something bad, there's an immediate feedback from the stomach, or something is not right. And similarly, when we get ready, we all look into the mirror to just check how it is. Do we need to correct something? And similar, it's the simplest form. Feedback is a mirror. It just shows you, okay, this is what is, and the auto correction happens. And in a similar manner, biofeedback can be understood as a body signal mirror. So bio, from the body, it can be any signal, biological signal, when recorded by sensors, and then it is fed back to the individual. How it is fed back, the information is given back either in terms of audio, some beep, some tone, or in some form of visuals or maybe tactile, to train the autonomic nervous system. Now, autonomic nervous system is our nervous system which goes on without our intervening in it. Our heart rate, our cardiovascular system, our breath, and other functions of the other organs. And some of them we can train, and we will look at them how. So through biofeedback, some of the most common things that we train are the heart rate again, heart rate variability, a galvanic skin response, blood flow, brain waves. So when we come to the brain waves, the term itself, instead of biofeedback, we start calling it neurofeedback or brain biofeedback. And this is the information which we get access to by using these sensors, which we usually don't get access to without the sophisticated sensors. As in we can feel our pulse, but to 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 have it time to time, to see the graph, to have it in a more accurate form, is possible only when we take help from the technology part of it. So saying that, I move to the next slide. And in this, we see how the different modalities are. So if we look at our body as one instrument, and it has an electric field around it, it has magnetic field around it, and we can in a way capture any signal or any data, even blood tests, even hemoglobin tests, for example, diabetes tests. It's all data that we get, and in data is a form of feedback to us. What do we need to correct about it? And with biofeedback, the correction and the training happens live, in the moment. So when we capture the data from the brain, from the scalp, which is in the form of EEG, electroencephalography, then it's called neurofeedback, I mentioned earlier. Similarly, we can capture the data from our muscles. If some people are, sometimes they have problems with the muscle tonality, muscle tension, and that can be improved by biofeedback. Similarly, from the heart, the HRV, pulse, ECG, this data can be captured. Then again, the respiration. So how we breathe. Is a person a chest breather or a deep diaphragmatic breather? So it's a form of a belt that comes and is worn around a diaphragm. So it captures the details. Then skin conductance is also called GSR, galvanic skin response. And then the temperature. And there are many others. So this forms a gist of it. And to to begin with, I'll start with the neurofeedback to take further to take the presentation further. So what is neurofeedback? It's like a brain gymming. You can imagine your brain building muscles. Not literally, but yeah, rewiring the neurons. We all have heard about neuroplasticity in the recent times. It's become a very common term. So the brain is always learning, is always building new connections. It can always unlearn, relearn, and develop new patterns, new optimal patterns, what we expose it to. And with neurofeedback, we are giving it specific information where it can um, unlearn the patterns which are not serving it anymore and relearn the better ones. So how it is done? So again, the EEG is take. I will go through the nice pictures in the next few slides. So EEG is taken from the client's head and is fed back to it, to the client, in form of audio or visual or both or tactile, so that it corrects itself. Neurofeedback or brainwave training is a brain function training which takes advantage of body's ability to self-regulate and seek balance. So the body is made for homeostasis. It is always seeking balance. In even the worst of the worst scenarios, it's always looking for the survival, what it can do best. So anytime you expose it to some healing therapy, to some technique, it's gonna take it. So in neurofeedback is a way to quantify, because we see it in numbers, we see it in graphs, to quantify and train the brain waves. Now, how do we train it? We will look further. And electrical activity in the brain is classified by frequencies, and we might have also come across the terms theta frequency, alpha frequency of the brain. There are lots of meditations also on YouTube and some music that's available with these names, and we will also have a brief chat about that. So this is how it is captured. Some of you may have seen the EEG. Some of you may have not. So the cap is worn on the head, and then we can see these different electrodes. These are placed on specific different locations on the head, and the electrical activity is picked up. In the graph below, this is how the raw EEG looks like. And the brain activity is given to us in terms of amplitude, microvolts, and frequency, hertz. So EEG recording of electrical activity, we saw that. Typical intensity of a adult EEG is between 10 to 100 microvolts. So these are very minute signals. And frequency is typically 1 hertz, a little below 1 hertz to 30, most commonly 30 hertz, but it goes beyond. We call them gamma waves now. And different bands of EEG are delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, as per the from the lowest to the highest frequency. Now, what does all these terms means? So these different, you can imagine it like a music composition. There are some notes higher, some notes lower, which gives it a certain rhythm, which gives it a certain melody. And similarly, when our brain is producing all these frequencies all the time, and whichever frequency is present in more abundance, in more amplitude, that determines how we are feeling, what's our state of mind. And we shift, we move from one frequency to another like a flow. So when we are in deep sleep, that's when the brain is doing the minimal activity. It's in the delta frequency, which is less than 3.54 hertz. Deep sleep as in not even the dreams. So small babies, they produce a lot of deep delta waves. As we grow up, we start to be more in the theta wave. Sometimes we go into the delta in between the sleep for some time. Then theta is again sleeping and the trance-like state, not sleepy, not awake, hypnagogic, and it is between the 4 to 7 hertz. The hertz meaning like in 1 second how many cycles it's doing. Then is the alpha state, which is our restful state. The brain is awake but not engaged. At the moment we close our eyes, alpha becomes pronounced. And then is the beta wave, which is awake with mental activity. When we are working, we're talking, now we're listening to the presentation, I'm talking, we're looking at this and hearing and connecting the dots. Okay, where do I pick what? So it's more of the beta activity. Now, where does the problem arises? The problem arises when we get stuck in one or the other ones. It's like when you're driving a car and if the gear gets stuck in first gear and you want to race, you won't be able to do it. It's a conflict. Similarly, when you want to work hard, you want to solve a complicated uh, problem or equation, and the brain is stuck in delta, you'll probably be sleeping or be very foggy headed. So now how do we shift those things so that the brain again is at this optimal zone where it can flow from whenever you need it, and that kind of frequency should be there, right? So that's the mastery, to be in desired state of consciousness at desired time and being able to accomplish it, because we all feel ups and downs. uh, Everybody's daily life is a mixed bag. If not daily life, maybe life is certainly a mixed bag. We cannot control the situations. What we can do control is how do we react to it, and it's easier said than done. How do we react to it? There are moments when we really don't have the capacity. So it is in those moments, how do we change our reaction to response? And again, it's not one day job. It's like training every day or training more regularly. When one wants to perform dance on stage, it doesn't, performance might be 2 minutes, but there's a long preparation that goes. Similarly, when you train yourself in sports, you or let's say football, You won't be able to score a goal unless you have practiced it many, many, many times every day. And then is when you'll be able to goal secure a goal when you need it. Otherwise, it may happen, it may not happen. It's a 50% possibility. And same is with our responses. It may happen, it may not happen in the desired way. And then these techniques, neurofeedback being one, biofeedback being one, meditation, mindfulness, everything, whatever works for all of us. And we will look at the many different techniques how to do it so that we get into more control of our states to build more resiliency. And this is a small flow chart of a neurofeedback. So, how does that happen? A person walks in for assessment. The brain assessment is done by putting that cap and electrodes, plus the interview. The data is collected, what the person's main complaints, main issues are, and then it's fed back to the system. And from the system, the person gets to watch the real time EEG through a video. And we will look at that in the next slide. And the way it works, the training, is creating a change in the brain networks. And it changes for a more optimal functioning. And then that again can be checked with a second assessment, maybe after a few sessions. In here, it's a session in progress. So EEG is being recorded from the head. This is the amplifier. If you see this tiny black box, this is again given the signals are being recorded in the laptop. And this is the client screen. So this is where he's watching his EEG. Now there's an option to also watch the boring zigzag wiggly lines of EEG if one finds them interesting. But another way is it is translated into information in form of a video audio visual feedback that we were talking about. So now a video plays. Video can be our choice, music can be our choice, and the way it plays is where the training happens. So now the video, I will play the video of this thing for you, and you'll see that there's a movement in that. The video shrinks back, music stops, the video comes full screen, the music is playing. So how is that happening? That is happening only when the system is detecting those optimal signals in the brain. Then only the person gets to hear the music and to have the video full screen. Otherwise, it stops. So, in that way, it is very different from watching a TV, which we put on and we watch it mindlessly. It goes on and we are in some different zone. But in the session, it stops if you have zoned out. So, one has to maintain that attention, one has to maintain that awareness, but in a very relaxed way. Because if you get tensed, I have to perform, it again stops. If you feel drowsy, it again stops. So it becomes like a fun exercise. You're playing a game, but through the mind, not through the console. And that's how the brain is learning. It's getting rewarded each time it's doing something good. And I'll play the video for you. So when it's coming forward is the positive feedback. And the brain is trying to do that again and again because it wants to learn. It takes a lot of effort.
Chekma, just one thing. Was
Yes.
there an audio because we were not able to hear that?
Oh, there was. But it was a
Maybe when you,
simple.
yeah, maybe when you share the window, you have to click on the, include computer
Audio.
sound.
Oh, okay. I'll check that again, maybe.
Yeah, you can stop sharing and reshare it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's audible. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. So a session like this activity for the client, it goes for about 15 to 25 minutes. 20 minutes being ideal, our attention span. If they like it, we can extend it to 30 minutes. For children, it's a little bit less, as long as it's comfortable for them. Now we move to the case studies. So these are the different color maps of the assessment that we saw in the flow chart. So this assessment, what is this neurofeedback assessment? We also call it QEEG, quantitative EEG. So this is done when the client comes in with a set of complaints. And this one case study I'm going to discuss with you is of a person who was having issues with anxiety. And we can see here, these are different maps. Like each map denotes particular frequency at, like we discussed, from the delta, theta, beta. So at each frequency, how does the brain look like? Are some areas overactive or some areas underactive? And that gives us information of what the symptoms of the person could be, what the issue could be. And if we see it here, most likely we'll be able to train it, because the next time the person comes for the session, person gets the feedback only with those areas which were not okay, and those frequency which were deviant. Only when they get optimized, the video plays, otherwise it stops. So it gets very specific. So in here we see the color range. So the green color is the good color, it's the normal. So it's actually a normative database. So a client's brain signals are compared to a database of the same age. It's a database of the collection of EEG signals of the people who are normal, not having any symptoms or some diagnosis. So how different does it look? And we see most of it is green, but we see in the higher frequencies 20 hertz. In the back portion, this we see slight red coming in, even in the 15. And we go further and we see from 21 to 30, which is the beta range or the high beta range, we see a lot of red in the before, and in the after we don't see. So this after is captured after 16 sessions, if I recollect it right, 15, 16 sessions. And so now here that we are looking at the before and after brain maps of the high beta activity, and we see that it is more in this back portion. So for the reference, this small thing here is the nose. So then this is the right hand side of the brain, this thing, and this is the left hand side, and this is the back, this portion. And even if I have not met the person and I just see the graph, there is some things that I can deduce is that the person might be feeling anxious. They might be struggling with ruminations. They might be struggling with anxiety. There could be some form of trauma that they might be struggling with. And those are the things that get captured in the QEEG, and then it can be retrained. And after the training, we can see it goes back to the normal. Plus, the bigger thing is that the person feels the difference. So it's a both. This technique is a both subjective and a objective um, feedback. In case that we see again is a before and after 16 sessions. The previous study was of a female client. This is a male client. Nothing with the genders, just getting the two different cases together. It's a case of a depression. And in here, we see the reverse. Like in the previous case, we saw the slower activity was all nice and green. And in here, we see different uh, reds in the slower waves, the 5 hertz, 6 hertz, 7 hertz. So these are the different interpretations. And this is how different things look, different symptoms look in our brain. Stress has a different markers, depression has a different markers. Migraine is many times the root cause is stress, and there are hormonal causes, there are metabolic deficiencies also. When we are feeling emotionally overwhelmed, it might show up differently. When there's a PTSD, it may show up differently. Sleep disorders show differently. And these are the two cases, stress and depression. So this is how they are. And we see there's a lot of activity on the right, then compared on the left, which is also a very um, prime marker for the depression. Along with depression, what the person might be feeling when there's so much of the slow waves, like I was explaining before, that the brain gets stuck in one gear. With so much of the slow waves, imagine how the person would be feeling at when he's going through the daily life, when he's working. First of all, feeling very slow. It's like a foggy head, feeling very slow, lack of energy, drained out. And the other things would be lack of inhibitory control, impulsiveness in nature are the other things that the person struggles with. And then as those get trained, again, and the training is in that fun way. You just have to watch the screen, make the video play, and listen to the music. And the brain is rewiring itself differently because it's getting very specific information. And that's how the healing happens. This is the part of neurofeedback. And now we move to the biofeedback part. Back again, instead of the cap, we have the sensors placed on the fingers. So nowadays there are sensors that are also placed on the ear lobes. I'll show you some pictures of it. And like we discussed about the breath, one goes on the diaphragm. So in this one, we see the three sensors on the finger. The device is called IO from the company called Unite, and it is capturing the three forms of data: heart rate, GSR, which is the skin conductance, and the breath rate. There can be others that can be included, but this is what I have in my practice. And a brief introductions about the definitions. What do we capture? What do they mean? And this sensor here is the heart math. So this is the one with the ear clip. And you get these graphs like these. So we are capturing the breathing rate, the heart rate, and the heart rate variability, HRV. HRV also, some of you might have come across these days. It's becoming a very common term, especially for the athletes, for the sports people. They train themselves. It's a very it's a marker for a healthy cardiovascular system. It tells us about our resilience. And so, yeah, sensor location can be on the finger, can be the earlobe. The type of sensor is mostly plethysmograph, or it can be ECG. Electrodes can be placed on the chest, lower torso, or the wrist like a watch. All our smart watches these days have the heart rate monitor, but not all of them have the heart rate variability. There's a slight difference in that. Heart rate variability is a healthy variation between two heartbeats. It's the time difference between one to another heartbeat. So it's very counterintuitive. We feel that heartbeat is constant, but it's not. There's a slight difference. It keeps changing according to the activity that we do. It's different from arrhythmia, which is a major difference in one to another heartbeat, but this slight change is very healthy. Heart is a responsive organ, like the engine of a fast motorbike. So many factors correspond to the change, and in response, the heart rate variability changes. It can be our emotions, our physical activity, how we are feeling. Are we feeling stressed? Are we feeling anxious? When we're giving exams, we can really feel our heart pounding, and then the heart rate variability, if you see, it might be lower if when we are very rested, very relaxed. And then the another thing is a coherence. It is another measure derived from HRV, and it's a natural reflex phenomena. It is a particular point where our heart rate and our breath, they fall in sync. Um, what do I mean by that? So I mean, as I inhale, the heart rate goes slightly up. As I exhale, the heart rate goes slightly down. And it's a natural function, it's a natural phenomena. It happens ideally around 6 breaths per minute, which is our resonance point. For people, some people it can be 5.5, some people it can be 4 breaths per minute, for some people it can be a little higher, but it is at the point where we feel most regulated, most quickly, the HRV is higher. And if a very small exercise, if you note your pulse, set a timer 1 minute and note your pulse and note your heart rate, breath rate. How many breaths are you taking in 1 minute? And what is the pulse rate going? When you feel anxious, the pulse rate might be around 90, 80. Naturally, it's about 72 beats per minute. And when we are talking, our breaths might be 12 to 16 breaths per minute. If you're feeling anxious, they can even go higher to 24 breaths per minute, 20 breaths per minute. And we see the resonance pointed at such a slower breath, 6 per minute. And it is not possible to do that all the time. But what is essential is in our daily lives, if we can take out some point, maybe when we wake up, or maybe before we go to sleep, or some tiny little moments, 5 minutes here and there, and sit and breathe at that frequency. It just brings back the system together. We can obviously utilize the good equipments for it, but even if not, we can always utilize our natural body mechanisms. And what blocks this rhythm? And there are also times if when there's nothing stressful in my life, but I still feel anxious. That's when I've kind of gotten stuck in a pattern, and that's when it's best to reach out to experts, to reach out for a therapy, to reach out for techniques like this. And grief, anxiety, long time stress, anger can block this rhythm, and we can slow and steadily we can practice and go back to it. So this is what I was explaining. So like from one heartbeat to another heartbeat, the time difference keeps changing a little bit. And at the resonance point, the breath which is in blue, the heart rate which is in red, they start to follow each other. And this is how it looks when we are not in our optimal state. It's very jagged, the graph, incoherence. And when we are at our optimal performance, this is how nice the sine wave is. And then this is another biofeedback session in progress. So the sensors, the client has this on, and what does he see on the screen is the graph of the heart rate, the coherence spectrum, heart rate in number, coherence in number, and the skin response in a graph. So if a person is very stressed, very anxious, the skin response graph will also be like spiky. When we are relaxed, it's going to be more steady. And then there are games. The training happens here also, again in a gamified version. So I'll play this a very short video to give you how the graph comes up, and then we look at the game one of the games that happens through the graph. So the next one. So this next one, we will see this boat going up and down. So it has a motion to it. And what we need to do, we can all do this exercise together, is follow that with our breath. We can inhale as it goes up, we can exhale as it comes down. So this motion is at that resonance point that we were talking. It increases the coherence. It is set at 5.5 breaths per minute. And I'll play it for a while and just notice how you feel about it. Hope you liked that. So now what is the difference? In yoga classes also we see teachers saying inhale, exhale. And that's the easiest thing when we want to guide somebody. What's different here? The technique is the same. The only difference is because you are hooked on to the sensors, we will know if you're able to follow it or not. If you're not able to follow it, for some reason, the game will not proceed. For example, in this game at the end, there's a beautiful lightning and sparks, fireworks that happens. So if one is not able to follow that, that will not happen. So then it's like again, a reward. We will do it correctly when we see the graphs moving incorrectly. And because I see the graphs, so a lot of information can also be deduced from that. If the person is inhaling enough, or is the person not exhaling enough, maybe they're holding the breath and that's why it's not happening, or maybe they're not using the diaphragm. And we'll look at that also in some time. If the person is a chest breather and there's a difficulty, so all those sorts of reasons can be rectified. Was about the biofeedback, and now we come to the part of our daily lives. Of course, this biofeedback is also something you can do regularly, and some of you might be already doing it too. So this is a small introduction to the brain model, triune brain model. So it's a theory, it's an evolutionary brain development theory, which says that the brain has 3 development stages. So as we mature, the brain starts developing, and also amongst the species, actually, from the reptiles to the humans. That's why the different names. Even as when the baby is born, it's the reptilian brain that's the most active. The baby is only worried about the fight or flight. If he's fed well, if it is secure enough, if the mummy is around, if the daddy is around, if he's warm enough, and just those things. And the only thing is that he cries if it's not there. It's just survive and just get what it needs. And as the child grows up, the emotional brain starts to developing the feelings, the habits, the attachments. And then comes the later part, the neocortex, the rational or the thinking brain. So our brain is kind of fully matured around when we are 21, 22 years of age. Till then, it's still growing. But major part of development happens, and then there, of course, with the neuroplasticity, we are always able to learn new things. We are able to unlearn the things that we don't need anymore. So from this, what do we deduce? Is whenever there's a threat, any kind of threat, it can be physical, it can be mental, emotional. What kicks in is the reptilian brain, which is the crisis part. And this is where the instincts, the responses come. We just need to feel safe. And the responses may be able to serve us in the moment, but many times they don't serve us in the long perspective, in the long term. Or we many times act out of the emotional brain. Oh, why this happened to me? Again, it's the stuck loop with the feelings. But again, it's not giving us that expansion, that ease. Where do I put this situation right now in a bigger picture? That comes from the rational brain. But what happens is it takes time for the rational brain to kick in. The first things whenever we feel threat with the impending exam, fight with the partner, going late to the office, and all that small threats is we are like going back to the reptilian. And it's our body is built to deal with stress, but in a short times. If we don't move out of that zone for the longer time, those chemicals and hormones that are released, they harm us. And then this is a little bit of the nervous system, autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So basically, they move in harmony. Sympathetic acts in prepares the body for fight or flight, stress, cortisol, adrenaline, increases the heart rate, the blood pressure, it decreases digestion. Now, digestion is not needed for safety and survival. And when the stress is gone, the parasympathetic comes in, which is the rest and digest. It returns the body to a calm state. Growth hormones are released, heart rate decreases, blood pressure decreases, and the repairing of the body starts. If one gets active, the other has to come in to put a break to that. If the parasympathetic is going on for a long time, there are also instances if one doesn't get aroused, it's the hypoarousal, the shutdown mode, the frozen. So there needs to be a balance of both parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic nervous system. And we see what kind of exercises we can do in our daily lives to keep that balance. Okay, because we cannot change life. We cannot control what triggers will be thrown at us. What we can control is how we can better deal with them. And the strategies that I'm going to share with you are divided into 4 kinds, because we feel the stress in 4 different dimensions of our body. And this content is taken from the Gregory Kerman's work. He's a neuroscientist, runs the Brain Academy. His courses are available on Udemy. Very good courses if you feel like doing them. So 4 different kinds of strategies for combating stress in your daily life. When we are feeling mentally exhausted, mentally stressed out, burnt out, what works then? Yoga. Basically disrupt your thought chain, that rumination. We need to cut it so that the brain can rest. Yoga, Tai Chi, the slow movements, or simply take a break, the pause, the meditation, guided imagery, news shutdown. So with news and with the smartphones, we are constantly uh, taking in, and it overwhelms us after a point. So it's one of the good strategies to just shut it off for a while and not be bothered about the things that don't directly involve our immediate environment for a little while. Change of perspective, playing the brain games, Sudoku, chess, some of the games on the internet maybe, and board games. Everything helps to disrupt whatever is constantly going on in the head. Then the sensory relief from the sensations, from the eyes, ears, nose, skin, taste, smell, so much data we take in, and this it's bombarded all the time to give that part a rest, to let it regenerate. And what are the some things for that? This is the best one. The spoil yourself, our pleasure centers, breathing, which we looked at the previous exercise and we'll also look at it again. Spa, aromatherapy, being in nature. So nature heals, nature slows us down. The sound of birds, the sound of waves, the trees. It's very different from the constant buzzing sounds and the constant um, loud noises that we hear in the shopping mall. It's very different. It's very gentle in the nature. That gives us the sensory relief. Then sauna, bath with aromatic salts, soothing music. We all have our playlists. So whenever you're overwhelmed, just plug in, listen to something, some instrumental, some of your favorite music, some binaural music rhythms. They are available on YouTube. They're very slow, very calming. So it rejuvenates. Massage, dark chocolates, multi-sensory exercises are the easiest one sometimes for some people to take a nap, sleep, take a cat nap. These are inspirations from a cat. Then the physical relief is move, sweat it out, anything that, because when we are stressed, all those hormones that are released in us, the cortisol, the adrenaline, they need to go out. So move the body, dance, jog, run, walk, gym, sports, play with kids, play with your kids, play with others' kids, because they will tire you the max. They have so much of energy. And anything that makes you move and sweat is what will give you the physical relief when you're feeling stressed out. And the emotional relief, the emotional center. So this is the part of connection, talking with friends and families with whom we share a genuine connection. Even if not talking, just being in their company helps us so much. Animals. So those of us who are animal lovers, so we can vouch for it, how big a stress buster dogs, cats are. Ask for help. When you're feeling it's not in your control and you're really stuck, is the time to ask for help, to ask for guidance, to seek support. And also, when if we are in a space we give support, is also makes us feel good. Humor, laughing is the best medicine. In the being in gratitude, so it's not a mental activity, but it's sort of just taking a moment and reflecting back. Okay, what's going okay, or what do we have in the moment? We may not be always able to practice it, but whenever we can, it's a good practice, but it comes from the heart, not from here. Then crying is a big stress buster, and there should be no shame about it. Tear wants to flow, let them flow. Singing and hugs. Who doesn't like hugging? So these are some, in total, these are about 40 strategies, and we can look at it and choose our favorite ones. But the key to it is to do it regularly. Something is better than nothing. If you find out 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the breath work is very important. The yoga, 5-10 minutes every day, maybe slowly increasing it to 20 minutes, builds the resiliency in the body, in the mind, to deal with what the day throws at you. The pause. So when we looked at the triune model of the brain, from the reptilian to the prefrontal, the neocortex, and I shared that the reptilian is the quickest because the survival mode, and the response from the prefrontal takes time. How many times have we reflected back in a moment of heated argument, and later on we think, only if I was quiet for that 1 second, maybe I wouldn't have ruined the relationship with my best friend. Or maybe I could have responded better. Oh, I would have had a better, wittier response. But it comes later to us. So if in that moment when we are just about to, be ready to fight or be ready to um, respond, react, with all our strength, to take just a moment's pause. In that moment's pause, it allows the reptilian brain to sink and the other mechanisms to take over. The mindfulness exercises. One of that I came across recently is a 5-step approach by Dr. Ina Kazan. So what it says, it's got the acronym FLAIR. So what it says is feel. When we are stressed, feel what's happening. What are you feeling? Where are you feeling? Being present to that. Then label. Why label? When we give word to what we are feeling, we are engaging our prefrontal. Then we are not in the limbic anymore. So when we label, oh, I am feeling like this and this, then we are already shifting a little bit to a different system. The third is acceptance. very quickly, if I see something, I would want to change. Oh, this is not right. Oh, not doing all of that, but just being with it, just accepting. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. Good, bad, worse, whatever it is. This is what I'm feeling. And in this, we've already taken a few moments. The pause has come. We've engaged a different system. And then a response comes, which is spontaneous in that moment, whatever we want to do. Then responding. And then the last is expanding the awareness. It happens, expanding your perspective, looking at a more holistic approach to whatever is happening around. This also can be done or once in a while, whenever we are in that whatever situation that's disturbing us. And the last is the breath work, which we discussed, all the HRV, heart rate. But what do we do about it? All the yoga, everybody talks about it. One thing that you need to check is if how are you breathing? Are you taking the shorter breaths from the chest, or it's more the diaphragm here? So in the diagram that you see, this is the diaphragm muscle. So this moves up and down as we inhale and exhale. You can imagine it like a balloon inside. So as we exhale, it expands, the diaphragm comes down. As we inhale, it goes up and we exhale. So unless we feel it like a baby, the belly goes up and down, we're not doing it right. And if we are the chest breathers, and if we inhale deeply from there, we end up hyperventilating ourselves, which is opposite to what relaxation feels, and it gives the pain because we're trying to move the ribs, the rib muscles, which are not meant for this purpose, and this also gives us pain. So engaging the diaphragm more, the exercises which teach us to hold our core is where we'll be engaging, we'll be learning about these. So doing more of those exercises, Pilates maybe, even in yoga, all the poses, as we are stretching, as we are contracting the bodies, it's a different breath work that goes with each of them. So we being mindful of that, and that also helps all that we've gotten inside our body in forms of the stress, in forms of just stuckness, stiffness to move and to ease out. So these are some of the things you can do in your daily life. And with that, I come to the last portion of my slide, which is the home training devices. So if some of you might be interested to maybe buy something that regularly monitors until the time you have some place to go or some neurofeedback studio to visit. So these are the few devices that are really nice and can be looked at. This is the heart math. This is the ring Aura ring. So it tracks the HRV throughout the day, throughout the night. They have their own apps associated with it. This is the orb. So the color changes as the skin conductance changes. So when you're stressed, it's a different color. When you're relaxed, it becomes more white. And then this is the brain muse. So it's a headband, tracks the brain activity and tells you when you're in a stress mode, when gives you beep or tone when you're relaxed and trains you like that. Then this is here is the Wholist companies. It's a vagal nerve stimulator. So it's a gentle stimulation. So it feels a little ticklish. So it activates the vagus nerve and calms the system down. Then this is here is a biostrap. So it's like a watch, but more like worn around here. It gives you your HRV again. It has um, its associated apps, and there's this portal HRV Optimal. They have their own devices. They are also compatible with other devices that can be tracked. And then there are free apps. So there's one very beautiful app, Breathe, which gives you the guidance, the pacer to inhale and exhale. It's got beautiful nature sounds in it. And there are YouTube links for the binaural music. So with that, I end my session, and I'll just take a moment for switching on the light and come back. Thank you for being with me. So now I open it for the Q&A. Any of you who have questions, this is the time to ask or write. And thank you for
So
being
there
with
are
me.
two questions already in the chat box.
Okay.
Mr. Abhishek asks, whenever we are awake, our brain works continuously. So
Mm-hmm.
how alpha waves are occurring? It should always be beta waves when we are awake.
So, like I said, like a music composition. So, because we are working, so beta waves are higher in amplitude when we are thinking, processing, and the alpha waves will be there, but the lesser amplitude. So, mind state will not be affected by the alpha because they are lesser, but with the beta. But they are there. So, it's not exclusively one or the other wave that happens.
Right. So I hope that answers your question, Abhishek. Also, Arvind is asking which stage of brain does reflect, for example, beta, gamma, etc., when we are snoring.
When we are snoring,
Yeah.
when we are snoring, we are sleeping basically. So it will be more of the delta and theta waves. But if the snoring, if it's a form of sleep disorder, apnea, or narcolepsy or something, it is also shown as on the this portion of the head when we get the EG. It's a different pattern that kind of shows us, which gives an indication about that vertex waves. So, but when we are sleeping, we are, and towards the sleep also we go into the beta. It's called the REM sleep. They look like beta spindles, but those are the times that we are dreaming. So the sleep has its own rhythm also. The deepest one is the slowest waves. Then when we are about to wake up or we are dreaming, then it's the beta that comes in.
Okay. These were the two questions in the chat box. If there are any more questions, I request the audience to please interact with our speaker. Yeah, so Mr. Nimai has also mentioned that we are listening to beautiful harmonies of different birds. So that itself, I think, has calmed everybody down. So, yeah, Mr. Saket, please go ahead.
Yeah, how hormones play a role in this?
So hormones again are the different. So what we discussed today is more about the electrical activities of it. Then hormonal system is a different system, and we all must have come across the happy hormones of the brain, the dopamine, the endorphin, the serotonin, and they get affected also. So they have the. So in the EEG, it has different markers. If the serotonin is less, or if one is on the um, SSRIs, it shows up differently, and those things can be discussed. And it does affect our. It actually it affects our brain at large. So it doesn't affect any specific brain activity as such, but it gives it whole like a flood the all the hormones that comes.
So whatever therapy you have suggested, that corrects the hormonal imbalances also.
In an indirect way, not in a direct way. Indirect as in when we are training the brain to relax, then the brain is also telling the hormonal system to secrete those hormones respectively. So it's an indirect way to change the hormones. And many times, if it's a physiological conditions, it may not be also uh, corrected, but it can be managed sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. If you would like to reach out to Chetna, you can always write to us and we will share all the details necessary. So I think we are at the end of the session. The technical glitch took some time, so
Yes.
we had to extend it a bit. But our audience was throughout here. So thank you everyone for joining in. I would like to thank Chetna for such wonderful and I must say a very calming session. So in the video that we saw, it definitely tells us how important mindfulness is. So I would like to quote Mr. Prem Rawat, who is a peace ambassador of UN. He says, "Jahan ho, wahan raho." So,
Precisely.
and this precisely, summarizes the whole thing.
Yes.
And thank you for the wonderful presentation. And we look forward to having you here in Jamshedpur and having more such sessions in practicality as well. So, thanks again, and thank you for accepting our invitation. I have to thank our audience who sat throughout. Despite the glitches and making this a very nice session and interacting with our speaker. And I hope this helped you in many ways. Everybody had some takeaway from this session, and I hope everybody has good time today. So thank you, and please follow us on all the social media
Thank you.
platforms to
Yeah.
get more updates on our JMA events that we are planning in future. I've also shared a QR code on screen, so please share your feedback, as we know how important feedback is. So please share your feedback so that it helps us plan such sessions in future as well. So thank you, Chetna, thank you, audience, and have a lovely evening. Bye.
Thank you, Asmita. And most welcome to Auroville Planet Trip. And you hear the words even more. And yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining. Please share your feedback.